Thank you, and apologies if I'm sounding a little slow or a little congested today. So I'm Peter Cowan. I'm the Director of Conservation Science for the Peninsula Open Space Trust, which from now on I'll just call HOST. And HOST is a land trust, and I'll explain what that is. But this is what HOST's mission is. HOST's mission is to protect open space in the peninsula and in the South Bay for the benefit of all. So what does that mean, and how do we go about doing that? We're a nonprofit organization that buys land from people who are interested in selling it. We usually pay market price, which means we pay full price for land, and then we transfer it, and that either means selling or donating that to public agencies such as the Peninsula Open Space District or state parks or county parks, and they often open it up for public access. So, who here has been to a state park? Great. Who has been to any of the county parks? San Mateo County Park or Santa Clara County Park? How many people have been to a Mid-Penn Regional Open Space District land? All right. I bet more of you have. It is a kind of a sleeper agency. It's a special district in our area that protects open space and opens it for public access. It was originally started by activists in the 70s who foresaw a need to protect land before it was gone. And we'll get into in a little more detail about how successful they've been, but they passed a voter initiative to establish a tax on every single property in their special district area, which is most of San Mateo County and parts of Santa Clara County, to go to fund purchasing and maintaining and opening for public access that land. Those same activists foresaw a need for a private entity in the form of the nonprofit I work for that could negotiate privately with landowners and raise private money. So that's what we do, is we raise private money from donors, 7,000 donors in our area who donate to us. We can negotiate privately with landowners that don't want to deal with the government or need to make a sale quickly for a variety of reasons. And we can do so confidentially in a way that the government can't. And then we can work with those state parks, county parks, and open space districts to protect that land in perpetuity. We also have another tool that we use, which is called a conservation easement. It's a little complicated, but basically we can buy certain rights of private land. So if you own some land, our organization can buy the right to build houses on it. And then we keep that right forever, and houses are never built on that property, but it is still owned by the original owner. So if you have questions about that, happy to answer those. Okay, so this is the region that we all live in. This is what I think about day to day, particularly this big green swath from about here all the way up there. That's where HOST works across that whole area. So, a few guide points. I'm just going to do a quick introduction, which I've already sort of done, a history of conservation and HOST, and then HOST programs and science, and then at the end, I'll touch on how I got to this particular role in my career path. So, the history of conservation recently sort of follows this trajectory over time as people have thought about why we value open space and nature. And there are sort of different steps on this continuum. One is just awe. We are amazed and think of nature as something beautiful and awe-inspiring. But it also, inherent in this, is that we see it as something apart from us. Sort of a next stage is we see utility in nature. We see nature as a place where we can get fiber, like wood material, or fish to eat, or provides drinking water, or those other things. So the reason to conserve nature in the odd cases because it's beautiful, and the reason to conserve it in utility cases because humans get something useful from it. More recently, people have been talking about connectedness to nature and the importance of taking forest showers, like going out and spending time in nature because it is beneficial to us to connect with nature. People are healthier the more time they spend in nature, and we feel more closely connected. And even more recently, we're realizing that our very survival as a species is incumbent on us being able to protect some amount of nature. So, particular to our area, California is just an amazing place for biodiversity. There are already 34 species that are presumed to be plant species presumed to be extinct, which is pretty depressing when you think about it. I recently saw a talk where the director of the California Native Plant Society was speaking, and he made the observation that while those 34 species have gone extinct, that basically has stopped because with plants you have the unique ability to collect seed material and grow it in greenhouses and propagate it. So there is maybe a silver lining on the plant story in that we have stopped total extinction. Another 600 species, though, are at risk of declining or in nature. So that's going to require a lot of work on our part to reverse that trend. And then the Bay Area in particular is a real biodiversity hotspot. So 3,000 species of native plants, 50 are locally endemic. That is a pattern across all organisms. California is just a real hotbed of diversity. It's a particularly diverse place for things like plants and lichens and birds. Our region has, the state of California as a whole has more than 2/3 of all of the birds seen in the rest of the continental United States. It's just a really unique place. So, when POST was founded and we met when it was founded, this was the protected land in our area in green in 1977. And so POST made its first acquisition in 1979 of Windy Hill, which is a preserve in near Palo Alto. Protected our first coastal property. Oops, did I skip a slide? Oh, that's the picture of Windy Hill. Sorry. First coastal property in 1987, which was interestingly also the second big acquisition that POST made. So it took 2 years to make the first acquisition. It took almost 8 years to make the second big coastal property. And in the 90s, multiple acquisitions. And this is what the protected lands in our area look like now. The darker green lands are ones that POST was involved in terms of either buying directly or helping out a partner. But you can see just the progress that has been made in 40 years as a result of the idea that a few activists had in the mid-70s to protect land before it was too late. So on this slide, 2017, POST organized systematically. We went from doing one-off land transactions to realizing that we needed to be a little more organized in the way we protected land. And so we had a number of programs. We have a public access program, which is focused on creating big regional trails in this area. So there are lots of trails that exist. This is to connect some of the major trails in our region. This is the Bay Area Ridge Trail, which is, the section that's a coast area, but it would eventually go around the entire bay. And then the Bay to Sea Trail, which is one of the big pushes that is being led by POST. We're also working on a coastal trail, which would run the entire coast of California. We have a farmland program where we work to protect farmland, particularly along the San Mateo coast, where there's a lot of pressure, development pressure to build houses or large estates on farmland, and providing land security and the infrastructure necessary to support that. That farming is in real need. And I like this slide because it shows a picture of us building a reservoir. Interestingly, most of the farms on the coast here can pull water directly out of creeks to water their crops. Crops, of course, need water when it is hot and summery and there's no rain, and so they take water from the creeks at the time when it is the lowest. And so by building reservoirs, we can help the farms take more water in the winter to fill the reservoir and leave it there, leave water in the creeks in the summer to support fish populations. We have a redwoods program. You might think, why am I showing a stack of timber for our redwoods program? One of the evolutions that we've made over time is working from just protecting redwood forest land to recognizing that in some cases it needs to be restored because it was all clear cut in the 1850s, and that has left a legacy in the forests that they're still recovering from. So in some cases, we actually will go out and cut wood, and if we can get it out easily, we'll send it to the mill and cut it so that it can be used and defray the costs of that restoration work. And then we have wildlife linkages work, which this is a map showing the ease of movement for animals across our region. You can see these areas where it darkens are areas where there are constrained areas for animals to move through. So this is the result of housing, people living in higher densities in these areas, and these are more open spaces. And then you see pinch points where animals have just a narrow corridor to move through. And just to give you an idea of what this work actually entails on the ground is that often it means going through culverts underground because these are the places where animals can safely cross roads. We also do research projects where we collar, in this case, these are bobcats. We put radio collars on them that report their location every 5 minutes. And so we can get a really detailed view of what habitats the cats are using, what things they're avoiding, and you can see very clearly the pathways that they'll move down and the barriers that they encounter. And then we can do work to remove those. Not a separate program, but a special initiative of host right now is Coyote Valley, and that is the space south of San Jose. So let's see if I can use the laser pointer here. That's this area where you see that increased ability to move, and this is really critical for wildlife and organisms in general in our area because this is the habitat that they have, and if this gets isolated, then the animals, particularly the animals like deer and mountain lions that really have large ranges, will get isolated from the protected areas over here, and that can have negative impacts on their genetics, etc. So Coyote Valley is also a really exciting place to work because of the confluence of human factors. So some of you may remember or may have experienced the flood in San Jose in 2017. So this is downtown San Jose, $100 million of damage done because Coyote Creek overflowed its banks. Coyote Creek is right upstream from this area called Laguna Seca, which was historically the largest freshwater wetland in our area, and used to look like this. And so our hope is that we can do work to acquire this area and take it from its trajectory of being developed as warehouse space to being a freshwater wetland again, and that we have evidence to show will reduce future flooding events when they occur. So that's kind of exciting this nice confluence of being able to recreate a freshwater wetland, which is really rare habitat, and the human benefit. So a place that's a little closer to us is Bear Island. This is a property that Post was involved in helping protect 10 years ago. It is a restored tidal marsh complex, and it provides a number of benefits for the city of Redwood City. There's flood control benefits, there's protection from the sea, from the bay in storm events, and then there are recreation events, recreation opportunities out at Bear Island, as well as a lot of habitat and biodiversity. So that's the big picture of what Post does, and an example of a couple of projects. Does anyone have any questions at this point? So Mount Amanum is Mid-Penn was the entity, is the entity that owns that now. I think they bought that directly without any assistance from Post.
In terms of overall and also like wildlife specifically, is it better to have like big chunks or a lot of small chunks?
Did you look at my slide deck before we?
I saw a lot of both, but
yeah. Okay. So that gets to the core of my work. I'm the director of conservation science for Post. So it's my job to help answer those questions of whether it's more important to have a big chunk of a reserve or a lot of scattered reserves across different habitats. And the answer is not entirely straightforward, but one of the things I do at Post is prioritize the land in our area. There is more land and it is far more expensive than Post could ever buy. So how do we identify the opportunities that are most important, the most critical, most urgent for Post's acquisition activities? And then once we acquire land, what do we do to it to make it as healthy as possible before transferring it to those partner agencies? So in the prioritization process, one of the important sort of key theoretical underpinnings of conservation science is island biogeography, which is just the observation made 60 years ago now that larger land masses can support a higher number of species. So this is from the Galapagos Islands, and you can see the number of species found on the islands next to each island, so you can see the effective size. And then here's a graph of the log area against the log number of species, and you can see the more area you have, the more species. So in general, protecting bigger spots of land is most important. It's also very important to connect areas. So if you imagine these as not being in the ocean, but being on land and these are reserves, creating connections between these can effectively add the sizes of those reserves together. So that's something that we think about a lot at Post is given given this land that's been protected, what are the most effective land acquisitions to do to connect these together to make them into effectively what are larger reserves? Okay. And so I listed out the 4 programs that Post has. We have a farmland program, a public access program, a redwoods program, and a wildlife linkages program. And then the other thing that I'm sort of tasked with doing is figuring out what other programs, what is the next step for posts from a conservation point of view. And so one of the things that we talk a lot about, think a lot about at Post is, given that, satellite photo of the Bay Area, where so much of the Bay Area is urban. So right now, in our area, in Post's working area, about a third of the land is already protected. About 15% is urban. And so how can we connect that protected land to those urban landscapes to support as much biodiversity and as much nature as possible? And so thinking about ways that Post can work in to connect, what happens to be the hills, because a lot of the lower land next to the bay was developed for housing, so it's easy to develop, to those bayside communities to support species. And this is something that people have been thinking about for a while, thinking about how housing structures can make good habitat for different species, and other ways that we can sort of incorporate planning into our cities to create urban gardens or urban swales that have not just the sort of green infrastructure, they provide infrastructure benefits as well as natural benefits. Okay, so just to sort of wrap up, I like to highlight the incredible progress that we've made in 40 years. We can make better use of all lands for conservation, including those urban landscapes and those farmland landscapes, and then success will have enormous benefits for all of our communities. So there's that overhead shot. This is about 15% of our area, and of the remaining 85%, another third has been protected. So any questions from that before I launch into sort of how I got to here?
What are the biggest hurdles that you find in trying to acquire land? Is it just waiting for land to be sold, or is it just dealing with owners?
Yeah, yes and yes. So we post deals with willing sellers. So that means the other party has to be willing to sell. So there are a few challenges. Land prices, unsurprisingly to anyone who lives in this area, land prices are a challenge. But also for us, because we're trying to be strategic and we have priority properties, there are just a few properties, particularly in something like our Redwoods program. The most beneficial properties from a conservation point of view are owned by very few owners, and they will be willing to sell when they're willing to sell, and we can sort of talk about the benefits of working with us and talk about some of those different tools that we have to do land protection, like conservation easements, where they can still do things on their land, but we kind of have to wait for them. Yeah.
Have you found with so much wealth in this area that people have donated land over a couple acres?
So for land trusts across the United States, and there are hundreds of land trusts, many of them, that's how they acquire the majority of the land, is that people actually donate land that they own to the land trust. Post has gotten donations in the past. We just got a donation this past year of a conservation easement on some farmland. So it was farmland over by the coast, and the owners donated an easement that will require that land to be used for farmland in perpetuity, forever, and will also protect the creek that runs along that. And I think we valued that donation at $2.5 million. So people do donate, but not as much as some other land trusts. We get more donations because of the wealth in this area of money, which we can then use to acquire land. So, my career path. At first I had a windy road put up here, and then I realized that was not an apt figure. So I found a trail, and I think this is actually more apt because this trail splits and comes back together. So my career path, when I was in high school and in the very beginning of, well, let's back up even further. My father is an entomologist. He studies insects, and I had lots of experience going out in the field with him during his research. But yet, despite that exposure to natural systems and to ecology and organismal research, when I was in high school and in college, I was interested in pursuing a medical career. I'll pause. How many folks here feel like they know what they want their career to be? Yeah, that's great. Okay. How many people have no idea? Okay, and of you, how many folks are getting a lot of pressure from others that they should have an idea? Okay. Well, I'm of a different opinion. It is just my opinion, but it is okay to not know what you want for a long time. It wasn't until I got this job about 2 years ago that I finally thought, this is a job I'm going to stay at for a long time. So, as I said, I had this experience of wanting to be a medical doctor, and I think part of that is because of the way we are taught about careers. It's really easy to imagine or to see the process to become a doctor or a lawyer or a teacher. You go to school, you go to maybe another school, and you get the appropriate certificate after taking the requisite number of tests, and then you are lawyer, doctor, teacher. My career path hasn't quite followed that. Because of my experience with my father, my first year of college, sent emails to a field station in northern Michigan asking if anybody was looking for someone to be a field assistant for the summer. So I think this is going to get to one of my key points. Rejection is a really common thing. I sent dozens and dozens of emails and only got one positive response. And that ended up taking me off the career path to being interested in a medical career, to being really curious about plants and how they work. And that was just my chance because I got to spend some time with plant ecologists who were thinking about how plants move water from the ground up through the leaves and how they grow. And then I took that and I took ecology classes, and I was exposed to ecology, which is not something that I had as in any of my education before late in my college experience. And then I started applying to graduate schools to do that kind of work. I started graduate school thinking I was going to study how water moves through plants and how that affects the way their leaves are shaped. And I arrived here in California in 2003, which was a really bad fire year. Hundreds of homes burned in Southern California. It's kind of interesting. I look back at 2003 now, and compared to the last 3 years of wildfire we had, it's a pretty tame fire year. But it was a really bad fire year relative to the previous years, and so I switched to study how wildfire affects plant systems, shrubs. And in graduate school, you can click into this path of doing your research and then doing a postdoctoral fellowship and then applying for faculty jobs. And I thought for a while that would be what I would want to do. And as I was nearing the end of my graduate work, I realized might be an opportunity for me to do an internship in the California State Capitol. So I did that. I worked for the California State Senate for a couple of years and got really immersed in policy. And I think one of the important things for me was that I went from graduate work where I spent a really long time working on one topic sort of single-mindedly that only 10 other people in the world cared about, to being in a place where I was making decisions that would affect 40 million Californians. And then I moved to DC to do more policy work, and I was doing that. I wasn't really liking what I was doing in DC in the policy world. I was working on climate change in Washington DC, which is not a very happy place to work on climate change. And someone from graduate school reached out and said, do you want to do some research? Started doing research with them independently, and that became my pathway into the conservation world. I worked independently doing research with them, and that turned into a job, which turned into my current job. So at each one of these steps, I didn't know what the next thing was. I was sort of pursuing what interested me at that time. When I was in college, getting up to that field station, I was interested because I knew that was a nice place to spend the summer, and so that's why I wanted to get up there. And that led into how I picked my graduate program. When I arrived at the graduate program, the news changed what I thought was important, and I changed my research topic. Then I got interested in policy, and so I went and did that. And each one of these things I did for a few years, sort of pivoting around. And they've all been really fun and all been really rewarding. So just a picture that illustrates some of these things. This is me doing field work as a graduate student. You can imagine that the dress code was a little different from when I was working in the California State Senate. This was the project I worked on in northern Michigan. So I think another thing that was common in a lot of these phases of my career is the feeling of not necessarily belonging. So how many of you have heard of the term imposter syndrome? Right. So imposter syndrome is the feeling like you are not, you don't belong, or that you are an imposter, that you are a fraud, and that something will eventually happen and everyone will figure it out. That, I think I've had that feeling at every single stage of my career, even at the start of my current job, that feeling of like, am I good enough or up to this task? And I think that, as I mentioned earlier, that rejection, I've gotten rejection in each of these different roles in my career in different ways, but that can really feed into that. So one bit of advice is just try as hard as you can to recognize imposter syndrome as imposter syndrome when you're feeling it, that it is not the reality, but an emotional state, and to be cautious when you get rejection that it doesn't feed into that imposter syndrome. And then I also add that by virtue of all of you being here, you're so ahead of the game by listening to the speakers and hearing all these different careers, you get a much broader breadth. I think part of the reason my career was so winding is that I wasn't aware of all the types of jobs that are out there. And so I can tell you, if you are interested in working in natural places, outside, at the looking just at plants or just at animals, or thinking about how people and animals, or people and plants, or people and food interact, there's a whole breadth of different careers for you that don't necessarily show up at job fairs. So I work with ecologists, I work with people who do animal tracking, I work with people who are farmers. I work with people who support farmers. I work with people who do financing for farmers. If you are interested in the food system, there's all sorts of different ways for you to engage in that. So if anyone has any interests like that relate to sort of the open spaces in our region, feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to talk to you about the types of careers that I know that are available. Okay. Any questions about that? No? Yes.
So, let's suppose I was a student interested in doing something with environmental science conservation.
Thank you.
What would you recommend that I do?
I would recommend looking into some of the agencies that I mentioned as our partners earlier. They all have intern programs. So the Mid-Peninsula Mid-Peninsula Regional Open Space District has a fairly large intern program. The Open Space Authority of Santa Clara Valley has an intern program. State Parks has an intern program. Post has interns, although we have fewer than those two bigger organizations. So that would be the first way that I would engage or would recommend people engage. I think all those internships are paid. If you are interested in unpaid things, all of those organizations, Post included, also have volunteers, volunteer programs. So you can come out and volunteer to get your hands dirty doing pulling weeds or leading hikes or other types of activities for any of those organizations. And that's a great way to meet people that work at the organizations that can help provide career suggestions as well as other people who are interested in those types of things.
You guys have any project manager openings?
What's that?
Do you have any project manager openings?
Any project manager openings? Currently at Post, I do not think we have any openings for project managers. We have openings on our accounting team and for an office manager.
You mentioned some trails that are still in the works. Is where some of them can be completed?
Did you say where?
The wind, like when would?
Yeah, let me. So this is our priority trails for public access. So the Bay Area Ridge Trail, it will be decades before the entirety of the Bay Area Ridge Trail is completed. I don't know what their timeline is. There's actually a whole entity devoted to the Bay Area Ridge Trail, which confusingly has the acronym BART. The Bay to Sea Trail, which is the one that Post is sort of leading the charge on, we are in the process of signing a letter of intent for all the entities that own land which the trail will go over. That includes the city of Redwood City, the city of Half Moon Bay, Mid-Peninsula Open Space District, the National Park System, county parks, Mid-Penn, and some private landowners. And I think they anticipate that it'll probably be 20-year projects to complete that trail.
Which one's C, the Summit to Sea in Castle Rock?
The Summit to Sea Trail
Is that
is
C?
already completed, right?
Yeah.
So that's over here.
Okay. Which one's C?
The Post's Bay to Sea Trail is the one that's A up here. And then there's this one they call Long Ridge Pomponia, which is another regional trail, which could be completed really quickly, but again, we're just waiting on a couple of landowners to make a deal, and so we have to wait until they're ready. So that could be a year, that could be 30.
Organization that you work for, you guys saw in the news that they're trying to put like bridges over 280, like mountain lines.
So I am not actually knowledgeable about the specific 280 project, but Post is really supportive of the bridges over Highway 17. Well, I guess one is going to be an underpass at Laurel Curve, and then Midlands Open Space District is working on an overcrossing near Lexington Reservoir. We've been working with them to support them on that. In that Coyote Valley area south of San Jose, we're really active in trying to create some crossing infrastructure once we can protect land in that area. All right. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for having me here. I appreciate it.